This month on 219 West, Stop and Text, a high-tech response to the controversial policy of stop and frisk.
The cool thing about this app is that when you close the app, the footage automatically gets sent to us.
In the game, it's big news when a pro athlete comes out, but these amateurs say, we've been here all along. Speaking their language, as more Chinese are looking to buy New York City real estate, who can bridge the language gap and close the deal?
Once they tell me their background and the first interview, then I know how to target the house or apartment for them.
Welcome to 219 West. I'm Matilda Mill.
And I'm John Sodaro. After months of testimony and argument, the case of Floyd versus the City of New York ended recently. At issue, the NYPD's controversial policy of stop and frisk and concerns about racial profiling and civil rights violations. Even before the trial started, tech-savvy community activists were changing the ways New Yorkers can keep track of these controversial police stops. All it takes is a simple touch of a button on a cell phone. 219 West, Candace Shepard reports.
Suppose you want to keep tabs on police activity like this in your neighborhood. Well, there's an app for that, and a text line, and Twitter and Flickr feeds too. Social media is making it easier, faster, and more discreet for anyone to document unlawful police encounters in their neighborhood and hold police officers accountable for their actions. A new app developed by the American Civil Liberties Union called Stop and Frisk Watch not only records police activity, but will automatically send the recording to a team of lawyers at the union. Some of the footage could even be used in court cases.
Well, what we are looking for in the video that we receive is a violation of someone's rights, right? Legally, the cops have rights when it comes to encountering people on the street, and people have rights as well. Legally, if there's reasonable suspicion, the cop has the right to do what's called a frisk, where they can pat down the outside of your clothing, but they can't go into your pockets, right? That's a search, and that requires another standard legally in order to do a search. And so we would look for things like that.
Taping those kinds of illegal searches with the app is simple.
The main function of the app is to record. So if I came out of my house and I saw police activity, I could just hit record, and that will pull up the incident of what was happening, and I could start to film. I could either click to stop or shake it, which closes the footage down and it brings up an incident report. This is just a short survey that you fill out that gives us some more information about what it is that you've seen.
Users can also provide as many details about the incident as possible, ethnicity and age of the person being stopped, or a description of the officers on duty. A Know Your Rights feature is available, and a listen function sends messages to other cop watchers using the app to alert them of an incident nearby.
The cool thing about this app is that when you close the app, the footage automatically gets sent to us. This is really important because so many people, when they try to videotape or record police officers on their own phone, report to us that cops erase the footage, take the phones, and now the footage is lost and no one knows what happened to it. This way, it's never lost.
Cop watch organizations like the New York-based Justice Committee still uses traditional ways to monitor police activity in neighborhoods.
Once you see something going on, we usually use some type of recording tool, which doesn't have to be a camera. I mean, a lot of people have cameras now, so it makes sense to have cameras, but it could be a notepad as long as you are able to identify certain details that are going on at that particular point.
Rico Guzman, a South Bronx organizer for the Justice Committee, also encourages cop watch teams to use social media tools to gather information about police activity on the streets. Justice Committee members frequently use the Stop and Frisk app to tape police interactions throughout the city.
I mean, a lot of people are on Twitter. I would definitely use, Twitter. Like Justice Committee, we have a Twitter. I think that they're very effective. It's once you get the information, then it's all about how best getting it to the right people who can then push it forward.
Videos of unlawful policing have helped to further support the data that shows discrepancies in stop and frisk practices. NYPD Commissioner Ray Kelly has claimed that stops take guns off the streets and save lives. But according to an analysis of NYPD stop and frisk data from the Civil Liberties Union, guns are found in less than 0.2% of stops, even though stops have increased by 600% in the past decade.
The thing that's interesting about this app is for so long we knew how many people were being stopped. We had anecdotal information about what those stops look like, but now we have a real look at what a stop on the street looks like. And for so many people, it's a really horrible encounter.
Learning about the stop and frisk encounters inspired social media entrepreneur Tara Conley to change the focus of a text line called Text Connect. The line, which launched in May, was originally a communication tool to connect young people in foster care and juvenile justice systems to educational and support services.
The more I was talking to activists, the more that I realized young people and just people in general needed some kind of communication platform to document and report incidents of stop and frisk. So I said, wait a minute, the text line could be used certainly for this purpose. So I've kind of repurposed the line to focus on allowing young people who are court involved to text in and document incidents of stop and frisk. They can take pictures and send it to our Flickr. They can also just text in keyword report and textual descriptions, and we will archive it and make it available to the community.
Conley plans to develop a Text Connect phone app and add other social media tools to the platform, like Instagram. Her hope is that text and phone data gathered through Text Connect can benefit communities in the long run.
There's so many possibilities with data. Data visualization. We could also use this working with, I think, the Center for Constitutional Rights. It's set up as a kind of a virtual community watch, but we do want to do something with it. If it can be used as evidence in court, I'm all for that. Let's do it.
The NYPD did not respond to a request for comment on how these different social media tools are being used to monitor police activity. Some cops expressed their view about the Stop and Frisk app in a recent YouTube video sent to the Civil Liberties Union. But Conley says having an open dialogue with police about these tools could help the NYPD change the way it interacts with heavily policed communities.
I really do want to bring some NYPD officers into the conversation. The mayor's office, absolutely bring them in the conversation. I think it's about transparency at this point. I think it's about communicating across time and space. It's about us talking to each other. And if this text line can help that, that would be wonderful. I'm totally open for that, yeah.
For 219 West, I'm Candace Shepard.
Earlier, Candace sat down with Oliver Sylvain, a law professor at Fordham University, who specializes in communication law and policy, including internet-related issues.
So, Professor Sylvain, for our viewers who may not know, tell us a little bit about what a technology and telecommunications law is.
Well, telecommunications law in general is a category of law that covers everything from telephony, to broadcast, to what we now talk about in the context of the internet. It's basically the regulation of the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure that is the stuff that delivers TV, radio, and broadband content.
So is this an area of law that's rapidly changing because of how quickly technology is moving?
Absolutely. So think back to the AT&T of the late 19th century. That was an entity that was covered by telecommunications law, but it was very limited to telephony and telegraphy. Through the middle of the 20th century, you see the emergence of broadcasting and radio and in television. That too is covered by telecommunications law, but it has to adjust and change to the changed technology. And then fast forward to the 1970s and 80s, where you have cable television, a whole new beast, which is also subject to telecommunications, all along changing along the way. And then the internet. The emergence of the internet. Really, late to mid-1990s, you see a more vivid introduction of telecommunications application to internet infrastructure.
How are lawyers and judges keeping up with the changing technology in order to determine how to use some of that information in court cases, if it can even be used?
Well, you know, it's uneven, and I have to be careful about what I say on this. Some judges are better than others. Some of it is generational. But there's a lot that the Judicial Conference in each respective federal circuit, for example, does to acquaint just judges with the emergent technologies. And also helps to pose questions about how to use the current technologies in our changing environment. There are also universities that are involved in educating professors about, judges on how to treat new technologies. It's the sort of thing that's a moving target. Judges don't tend to be at the forefront of technology, but they need to be at some point because of the cases they encounter.
In my reporting, the people I spoke to from different organizations that are involved in monitoring police activities said that they can use some of the footage they capture through their smartphones or if they take a photo of something. Now, are those things permissible in court? Is that even possible for them to use in cases?
Well, it depends on what you mean by capture. I mean, if it's just video, and we'll talk more about that, I think, in a second, yes, but there are certain ground rules that have to apply. But when you're talking about smartphones, you're talking about a lot of information that isn't just video, right? So there's also the possibility of eavesdropping and voice and audio recording as well. And there's a long history of that, going as far back to the 1920s in a Supreme Court case about the eavesdropping of telephone calls. What we have today, though, is a dramatic transformation, right? What you have is everybody basically becoming a raconteur, a reporter, where they can give a story based on the video that's a capture on their smartphone. And there's little question that in order for courts to be up to date, that they integrate that stuff. And so they have. Yes, courts do allow video evidence in, but the same questions that they ask all along for all kinds of evidence are applicable. Is it relevant? Is it probative? Is it prejudicial? Where did you get it? What's the chain of custody? How do we know you didn't manipulate it, right? These are all questions that apply for smartphone video.
Can you give an example of a case where evidence was retrieved through, let's say, the smartphone app where you can actually capture video of police activity, or someone took a photo of something and they uploaded it to Flickr or Instagram? Can you give an example of someone doing that and it was actually submitted into the court?
The sorts of things that judges have to consider were highlighted in a case in San Francisco involving a young man who was shot by police on a platform at the BART train stations, the Bay Area rapid transit system. And there are a bunch of people who are witnessing the detention of this guy and his friends. Three or the four witnesses have their cameras out, and you have 3 or 4 angles of a police officer point-blank range shooting a young man, claiming that he was resisting arrest. That's one of the more notorious cases involving the use of evidence in a civil rights action against, and a criminal action against the police, that specific police officer, for using a weapon based on evidence. Now, you know, we have to be a little mindful about what this this means in the context of law enforcement. As you may know, police officers have dashboard video cameras, and those are also used by defendants often in civil rights cases against police departments that are not smartphone based, and there are some controversies about the extent to which those can be used, but generally they are used as well.
For community-based organizations that are focused on monitoring police activity with cell phones or whatever other kind of smart tool, what would be your advice to them? Like, what should they know about the law? Because someone like the New York Civil Liberties Union, they have lawyers behind them. They know what to look for when they retrieve that footage. So a small community-based organization should focus on what about technology and internet law?
If I were a community leader, I would consult the respective websites of the NYCLU and the Pennsylvania affiliate of the ACLU, for example, or the Connecticut ACLU, to find out what their guidelines are, because things differ between different states. I would say that there's nothing wrong with capturing a video, but law enforcement, a police officer can always claim that the video can interfere with the law enforcement activity. So at a minimum, community leaders should tell their people, their community members, to be respectful, but they can still use the power of video to capture what's happening, as long as what is happening is in plain view and that their camera is in plain view. Because different states have different rules and different laws regarding the concealed recording of events. As long as it's in plain view, it should be fine.
Professor Sylvain, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
The sports world was rocked when pro basketball player Jason Collins came out. His announcements got near universal support. It was most welcomed by some amateur athletes who have been in the game for a long time. Jonathan Murphy caught up with them at Chelsea Piers.
A full 7 years before Jason Collins made sports history, a group of gay basketball fanatics formed a 12-team league called the New York City Gay Basketball League.
It's funny because as we watch some of these games every now and then, you'll make a comment to a friend that you would never even know this is gay basketball, and then someone will screech after they get fouled or something, and then we'll be like, oh yeah, okay. We are still gay basketball. So maybe, where Jason Collins plays and in the NBA, there's not much screeching, but it is as hard. We're no different in that way.
When Collins came out in April, he became the first openly gay active player in any of the 4 major team sports: basketball, baseball, football, and hockey.
But when I got home and seeing it on the news as the lead story, it actually made me tear up.
Michael grew up in a sports-crazed family, rooting for the Yankees and Knicks with his 7 brothers. He said that in the 80s, however, he kept his fanhood in the closet because he thought it was taboo for a gay man to love sports.
Being a gay man, growing up, and then you finally come to sense to that, and then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, though. Here's this sports thing that I'm really into, and there's no place for me to bring that I see in this community.
Now there is a place to bring it, Chelsea Piers Fieldhouse, where gay players have been competing against straight players for about 4 years. The team's name and style of play caught a lot of players by surprise.
So it was funny. We were at work and we looked at the schedule, and it said the New York Gay Basketball. We were like, are they? Sometimes people like to play games and play jokes. So we were like, are they serious? But then when we came down, we played them. They're a great bunch of guys. They actually play harder. They're probably the hardest team that we faced so far.
Jake Oliver is the gay team's leading scorer. He had already come out when he played in college at the University of Arkansas.
I had a lot of athletes come to me that weren't just in the basketball world, like, hey, let's hang out. And, I think they maybe were struggling with, being out and about with their teams. The men were always great. I never experienced any, they're always like, oh, but just don't come on to me. I said, don't worry. You're not my type, but all right.
Oliver came out when he was in high school, so he says he's less impressed by Jason Collins than he is by other pro players who offered their support.
People like Kobe Bryant stepping up saying, because you want to talk about Twitter followers, and that's the name of the game these days, is who reaches out to more people. I think that's a big deal that the big power players are supporting him.
Derek Isaac's team has faced off against the New York City gay basketball team 4 times, splitting 2 games apiece. Isaac considers them their top rival.
Usually people would come in and, oh, they're gay, so you don't have to play as tough, but honestly, they're probably the most aggressive team in this league.
The New York City gay basketball team's smooth integration into the Chelsea Piers League and the overall positive response to Jason Collins coming out are just 2 small examples of our society's broader embrace of the gay community.
Yeah, there's bigots and there's, and it's all over the country. But, knowing some of the younger kids and having some family that's in high school and much, much more accepted. And it's just the way it's going to be, in different generations.
Kokol says the Gay Basketball League is just like any other league that is organized by people who love the game, with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions.
We can sit around, a couple guys having a few beers, talking about sports. Can we talk about our shoes and our clothes, and those things come in there too, some of the typical gay things, but it's just phenomenal to have found that.
For 219 West, I'm Jonathan Maffei.
Whether you're a native New Yorker or a newcomer, finding an apartment in the city can be a stressful, daunting experience. But what if you're from another country? You might not know the neighborhoods, and you might not be able to get answers to your questions from someone who speaks your language. Now, there's an effort to do something about that for a growing number of would-be buyers. Mingling Wang has a story.
Sida Chen, a recent graduate from Stanford University, moved to New York for a banking job. He had been renting an apartment for a few months, but his parents thought it would make more financial sense to buy rather than rent. So they flew all the way from Sichuan, China, to help him make the decision.
I have been studying hunting for the apartment for 3 months, and my parents was here for almost 2 weeks. So we basically go through around 40 apartments and also around 3 brokers.
Chen's parents belong to China's booming middle class. His father works at an IT company and his mother co-owns a dental clinic. Their prosperity leaves them with some extra money to invest. But striking a good deal isn't the only thing they want. It is also important for them to feel comfortable in the dealings with the brokers, as they don't speak English.
I definitely want to work with someone with similar background, like speaking the same language and understand our culture. And if a broker can speak Chinese, it's convenient for me because actually it's convenient for my parents, so they can communicate much more fluently.
In recent years, Chinese investors have been pouring money into U.S. real estate. Between 2011 and 2012, they spent about $9 billion in residential properties. China now is the second largest foreign investor in the U.S. housing market. New York University recognized this new source of investment capital and the need to be better prepared to talk to these new investors in their own tongue. The university is launching a summer program specifically for realtors. It will teach them basic Mandarin to help them connect with their Chinese clients. Melina Savova, director of the Foreign Language Department at NYU, initiated the idea.
Many Chinese upper-class Chinese people are looking to buy real estate in Manhattan, and New York real estate agents have started learning some Mandarin in order to be able to communicate with their clients and also to understand Chinese culture.
Lisa Lee, a broker with City Habitats, a popular real estate firm, speaks mainly Cantonese and a little bit of Mandarin.
When I start speaking their home language, they immediately go, oh, they kind of have this breath of relief when I speak with them, and they say, oh wow, that's really awesome that I can do this transaction with someone I'm comfortable with and connect with on that level, on a cultural and language level.
And Jennifer Law, a real estate broker born in Taiwan who has been in the business for 26 years, had a similar experience.
It's a lot easier because once they tell me their background and the first interview, then I know how to target the house or apartment for them. Because they told me the background, everything. But for whoever doesn't speak Mandarin, they don't know how to from their conversation sense, are they really rich or are they capable to purchase a house?
In addition to basic language skills, the NYU course also includes feng shui, the Chinese system of beliefs that governs building design, as well as some special aspects of the Chinese culture that other ethnic groups may not be so sensitive to. For example, houses that sit north and face south are said to enjoy good feng shui and would be ideal for Chinese buyers. Also, the number 4, 4, is usually avoided as it sounds like death, 死, in Chinese, while the number 8 is generally viewed as an auspicious symbol of luck. The Chinese community's interest in real estate has changed in recent years. What began as a search for a place to live has changed into an interest in real estate investment. What began as a trickle a few years ago is now a flood of headlines.
New York is attractive to everybody in the world, but this is perhaps the first one that's attracted the media attention at this level.
There's a huge
addiction to real estate where they don't want to waste. So like, for example, from my personal experience, my dad and my mom save up money and they buy like 7 properties in the United States. They put their money where they feel that there's value and there's a return.
For Chinese people, it's more traditional in our mindset. Like if you want to work or if you want to stay in a place for longer, it's better for you to have an apartment here.
But nowadays, when Chinese put their money into U.S. real estate, what they're looking for might be more than just investment.
A few weeks ago, I have a Chinese people, the kids only 2-3 years old. And they thought about, investment in United States real estate is good. So they said, okay, now I come here to buy property and live here for investment. Until my kids 10 years later, then we immigrate here.
For 219 West, I'm Minli Huang.
Joining us in studio is Joe Wei. He's the national editor of the World Journal, the largest Chinese language newspaper in the United States. Hello, Mr. Wei. Welcome to 219 West. And we just watched a story about the influx of Chinese coming over to America to buy residential real estate here in New York City. Is this something that's going wider than New York City?
I think the New York City is probably the number one choice, other than the Los Angeles, San Francisco. Lately, Seattle will be another one. Yes, they come here primarily for the 2 reasons. One is for the better education for their next generation. The second is to try to keep their assets more valuable, do not depreciate that much in China. So 2 things they're going to buy. One is the better house in the good school districts. Traditionally, they will be buying the property in the Queens. They have 26 districts, the number 1 school districts in the city. And nowadays, they try to go spread to the suburban area. So Jericho, Long Island, Westbury. Yeah, and the Scarsdale. There's a more good school district they are looking at too. Other than the residential area, they also look into the commercial building too. In the Manhattan, you can see all the many commercial buildings. They try to inquire the prices, and they try to buy the more property in the big building in the city though. And also, they try to buy the condominium, the more luxurious condominium in the city. So you can tell each one of, almost every one of the big condo or co-op in Manhattan, there will be 1 or 2 Chinese residential. Yeah.
Okay. Is immigration also driving this influx to come to the States and buy real estate here?
Yes, for the rich people, rich people in China, from China, they, in United States we have called EB-5. There's kind of EB-5 visa provide for people who try to investment and create employment opportunity for this in this country. So more foreigners, not particularly in Chinese. There are other countries people too. They are using the EB-5 visa as a way to invest in the United States. Also, they can process their green card for residential, permanent residential area.
And this is more for like a rich base class, because the EP5, $1 million investment or a $500,000 investment into a company here.
Exactly. This is the one way they land in the United States more easily, and this is the other way that the Americans try to extract more foreign capital investment in this country.
Okay, just to boost our economy here
exactly. Too. And creating the job opportunity for this country, for the city too. Yes.
And how is the new regime in China? What's their policies? Is this something that they're for to kind of push investment to foreign countries?
I think the policy in China, right after the last November's National Chinese Communist Party 18 congressional meeting, and they have more clear policy that is increasing the export, increasing the foreign investments for the more people. And there's we mentioned that there are the 3 types of investment in overseas Chinese investment. And the last time I checked the figures, last time the Chinese company overall, they invest in the United States last year it will be $6.5 billion.
Okay.
And there was probably 30% increase than the previous years. Then we can tell this year probably going to reach $100 billion.
Thank you, Mr. Wei, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That's it for this month's edition of 219 West. I'm John Sidaro.
And I'm Matilda Mel. Join us next month for more stories from the 5 boroughs and beyond.